Again, price is the predominant factor here. And if you get to these levels or as high as 47,000, there will be people that got caught in the bear market decline that were even buying as high as the 40s, 50s, and 60s in Bitcoin back in 2021. And they will be happy to get their money back and they will cash out. And I also think that a lot of these institutions that have ETFs have probably been accumulating for the last couple months, knowing that eventually approval will come. And so there may not be as many buyers for the spot ETF as you think. I do think it's north of 100,000 within 3 years. I do think, again, it has much more higher levels that it can achieve as well.
Bitcoin price continues with its bullish bias, steadily edging north past crucial barriers. Meanwhile, investors are discussing the spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds with a view to determining why the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission continues to delay the decision. Expert trader Gareth Soloway anticipates that Grayscale's influence makes it increasingly challenging for the SEC to reject ETF approval. In an October 23 filing in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, the formal mandate of the court took effect, paving the way for the SEC to review its decision on Grayscale's spot Bitcoin exchange-traded fund, or ETF. Bitcoin recently hit $35,000 for the first time since May 2022, driving massive excitement about whether this could kickstart the next bull run. Its recent price action has been spurred by anticipation of Bitcoin spot ETF approvals. During the recent interview, Gareth Soloway expressed his anticipation that Bitcoin will exceed $100,000 within the next 3 years. During the interview, Soloway stated that if there is a positive reaction to the ETF approval, his maximum upside target would be approximately $47,000. He anticipates that $47,000 represents the highest potential price point in this scenario. The next Bitcoin halving is expected to take place in late April 2024. The event will see the Bitcoin block reward drop from 6.25 Bitcoin per block to only 3.125 Bitcoin. Historically, a year leading up to and after the halving, the price of Bitcoin goes up substantially. Soloway emphasized that the Bitcoin halving is a vital long-term factor, but short-term events like an ETF approval can trigger substantial price surges. Now, let's shift our focus to a video. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon for the latest updates.
And what we really saw was when we had that fake news that hit about the approval where Bitcoin jumped from about 27,000 all the way to a high of 30,000, what that made people recognize is that there's going to be significant upside when the spot ETF gets approved. And so what we saw a lot of short covering and a lot of buyers coming into the market. And essentially what we're doing is we're rallying Bitcoin higher going into this approval, which means we're factoring in that news. And so what's interesting here is you'll probably get approval by year end or early in 2024. If Bitcoin is still up here, you may not go higher. It may be already factoring in the approval. And that's, again, what we're seeing in the charts right here.
So would that be a buy on the rumor, sell on the news, or would that be buy on the rumor, stay steady on the news?
So in general, it's very possible it could be a sell on the news. And depending on how high we go, I just draw everyone's attention to NVIDIA last quarter, right? Last quarter, NVIDIA going into earnings was $400. It rallied up, and on earnings, it opened at 500 and change, and then it sold back down to 400. So you have this kind of tendency for psychology within markets and investors where they start to get excited about news and they start buying and buying and buying. But once the news comes, there's kind of this natural letdown. And that's, again, what we could be seeing on Bitcoin here.
So what level would we hit resistance? If there is approval, where do you see Bitcoin going, and where do you see it hitting resistance on news of a spot Bitcoin ETF being approved?
Yeah, so let's just say that it does jump, and I think initially you'll see this positive reaction, this kind of momentum trade jumping in. I would take this high from 2019 and connect it through the bull market lows, and there's this beautiful trend line. You can see how it connects right through these lows perfectly and right through these lows, and that gives us around a target potentially. This would be my max upside of about $47,000. But again, what I would be doing there is I'd be looking for it to fade that and actually expecting a bigger pullback off that level.
So what level? 37?
47 would be
47.
max upside. I think it's right along with those lines, either late this year or early in January of next year. It's coming. The SEC has lost every major case against crypto. And so they really don't have a leg to stand on to say no anymore, especially with Grayscale. So I do expect the approval, and I think it'll be the approval of many ETFs at once. I don't think the SEC wants to look and say, oh, they only approve BlackRock because that's, part of the, people say like BlackRock's part of the government or they're in cahoots with the government. So I think they don't want to portray that. So they'll probably approve multiple ETFs at one time. It doesn't, to me. The halving is a great fundamental factor within Bitcoin that is important over the longer term. But if you get such a run up on this news, like let's say on the spot ETF where it pops up immediately, I think it doesn't matter about the halving. You'll still see it pull back on the charts.
Bitcoin, known for its volatility, has witnessed its price doubling in the current year. Despite its price fluctuations, Bitcoin enthusiasts continue to display strong confidence and have propelled the price of Bitcoin close to $35,000. This surge in Bitcoin's value has also led to a broader rally in the cryptocurrency market. The crypto community is anxiously awaiting the approval of Bitcoin spot ETF applications and the upcoming halving event, which are expected to have a significant impact on the market. Soloway's analysis highlights that support at $31,500 is crucial for a bullish scenario. While falling below $30,000 could potentially lead to further declines, possibly down to $25,000 or even the low of $15,700. Now, let's shift our focus to a video.
The action in Bitcoin has been tremendous right now. What I'm curious is once we get this news out that the spot has been approved and that news is behind us, what's the next narrative to drive price? Is it the halving? Does that play into effect? And then ultimately, what happens if the stock market goes down 35%, like I've been talking about? At some point, fear and panic will take over, even in Bitcoin holders. Remember, there's a lot of people that hold Bitcoin, like myself, that also have big stock portfolios. And if at some point I'm down huge, do I start to panic and start selling everything? And I think that's the worry that could drive us back to 15 or even lower if we get really in a bad space within the overall asset markets. So we have to just let the charts speak for themselves. And if we look at the Bitcoin chart, we've broken above this previous high right here, right? This was right around 31,500. So as a technician, I have to respect that. And that level now becomes support. So if we pull back, that's actually a buyable level now around 31.5, give or take. However, it would be very, very concerning if we started trading back below that. So this level is almost now the line in the sand on a bull case. You have to hold this level. If you start trading below the 30,000 level, for instance, you then start bringing into account maybe going back to 25. If 25 breaks, maybe going down to 20 and then to that 15.7 low. So right now, the buyable level is 31.5. Let's see if that holds on any sort of retrace. I do think that there is ultimate demand for Bitcoin. I think the digital gold aspect of Bitcoin is slowly being adopted more and more. It's in its infancy at this point, but I do think that if you look at max pain, where the most people would be washed out, where bottoms are created, I do think that that would be right at that 10,000 even number. And I would be buying like crazy if we got down to those levels again. And I do think, again, now that you're seeing people like BlackRock CEO starting to talk so positively about it, granted, they're talking their book, we have to be recognized that since they're bringing this ETF to market. But I do think that the big money out there is starting to accept Bitcoin, and that's the beginning of it becoming its own asset, just like gold.
The price of Bitcoin continues to rise as hype builds for a spot Bitcoin ETF approval and the halving next year. Despite the excitement, some FOMO-driven investors are selling their Bitcoin holdings. While the delay in the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's decision regarding spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds remains a hot topic among investors. That concludes our conversation for today. What is your stance? To what levels could Bitcoin price rise if spot Bitcoin ETFs are approved? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. If you found this content informative, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for the latest updates. Thank you for being here with us.